Hi, Sam. How are you?
Hi, Mariana. I'm good. How are you?
Good. I'm happy it's Friday. And here we are, another session of Tea with Noli IP.
Yeah, today we're talking about trade dress.
Trade dress. You have a few questions for me?
hmm
All right, let's get started.
Okay. Okay, my first question is, what is a trade dress?
Well, you may remember that we talked in previous episodes about trademarks and copyrights and patents. And today we're going to be talking about trade dress. Trade dress protects the commercial feel and look of a product and a service. And you know, when you walk into a certain restaurant, for example, the Hard Rock Cafe, that is decorated a certain way, or a McDonald's restaurant that is decorated a certain way, well, that look and feel of the environment of the restaurant, that is protected under trade dress, believe it or not. So you know, the consumers know when we walk into these places that it is this particular restaurant, this particular chain. So it protects the ornamental features, the design.
That makes sense. What are the rights associated with trade dress?
So you can obtain trade dress rights. There are common law trade dress rights. So you don't necessarily need to protect your trade dress as a trademark. The Lanham Act allows users to protect their trade dress as a trademark. So you would file it like you file any trademark application, and that specific design or ornamental features will tell the consumers what is what is the source. It would identify the source of the products or the services. So in the case of the restaurant that I just mentioned to you, the consumer will know when it walks into this restaurant that is decorated a certain way, and those features are protected under trade dress, that they are in that particular restaurant. Whether it is a McDonald's or a Hard Rock or a Taco Bell, the way that the aesthetic of the place looks tells the consumers that they're about to receive products or services that provide from this particular company.
Okay, so what is the difference between a trademark and a trade dress?
The difference between the trademark and the trade dress, even though when you file for a trade dress, you would do it the same way with the United States Patent and Trademark Office filing an application for trademark, there are two different types of trade dress that you could protect with the USPTO. And we'll talk about this a little bit later in this presentation. If you file the trademark application for your trade dress and your trade dress doesn't have secondary meaning, meaning that the consumers immediately identify this design with the origin of the products of the services, if they don't have that secondary meaning, it will be protected on the supplemental register until you obtain secondary meaning. If there is secondary meaning, then you can obtain protection on the principal register. Both of them function as source identifiers. So the decoration of the McDonald's restaurant, it's a trade dress. And the McDonald's word itself, it's a trademark, it's the brand that lets consumers know that the products and the services come from this particular company. But the trade dress, as we said, it protects the design and the ornamental aspects. Does it make sense?
Yeah, I understand. Yeah. My next question is, how is it protected under law?
Well, and I was telling you, in a jurisdiction like we are in the United States, there are trade dress rights that accrue based on use, common law. And you don't necessarily need to protect it filing a trademark application with the United States Patent and Trademark Office. But you could if you wanted to, and it's actually recommended that you do, because then it's easier to prove if there were to be infringement, or it's easier to prove your trade dress rights. So it can be protected under common law rights in jurisdictions like the United States, but I personally advise that you do seek protection with the USPTO, because if you were to need to enforce your rights against a third party, it's much easier to prove with the courts.
Okay. What is trade dress infringement?
And it's interesting, I was just talking about that, like how it makes it easier to prove your trade dress rights. Infringement, as we've been talking, I think in a few previous conversations you and I had, infringement is the unauthorized use, like when a user of intellectual property of someone else does not have a license or a permission to use. So that is infringement. And trade dress infringement, it would be when somebody, let's say they don't have a franchise agreement from McDonald's, and they open a restaurant that looks exactly just like a McDonald's, for example. So infringement is the unauthorized use. And in this case, it would be trade dress.
All right. How long does the trade dress protection last?
And when you register the trade dress with the United States Patent and Trademark Office, you do it exactly the same as you would do for the trademark. And as long as you renew your registration every 10 years, it will last indefinitely.
Sounds good. My next question is, why is trade dress protection important?
You know, the easy answer is because it protects consumers. So it makes sure that consumers are not tricked, thinking that we're getting products and services from this one source, and they are not. So the importance of all intellectual property really is that it protects consumers.
That makes sense. So what is the difference between a trade dress and a design patent?
And we talked about the difference between the trademark and the trade dress. And I mentioned to you that the trade dress refers more to the ornamental features and the design. And now you ask me this question, which is a little tricky, right? Because if you could protect the ornamental features and the design with a design patent, why would you use a trade dress? Well, design patents, as you know, have a lot of the requirements in the United States that a patent application or an invention to be granted patent protection would. So the trade dress does not need to comply with the patentability requirements. They both protect the non-functional aspects, but remember that trade dress functions as a source identifier. So the ornamental features work as source identifier of the goods and the services that the consumer obtains.
Okay. What is a secondary meaning?
And I mentioned secondary meaning, and I know that this is like, what does this phrase mean, secondary meaning? But secondary meaning is that mental association that a large percentage of the consumers will have when it comes to the design and the source of the goods and services. That's why in this conversation, I keep referring to you to the Hard Rock Cafe scenario or the McDonald's or the Taco Bell. These are chain restaurants that everybody knows about. And when you walk into these restaurants, you know where you're at, you know the type of food and the quality of food that you're gonna get. But those are just some examples. Secondary meaning is that mental association that most consumers will have when they walk into these places, when they see these designs and ornamental features. What company are they gonna think about?
Okay, so why is the secondary meaning important?
And you know how we say, why is trade dress important and why is secondary meaning important? So always IP, it's important because it protects consumers, or trademarks and trade dress, I should say, it protects consumers. Secondary meaning is important because trade dress is a little tricky to prove. And if you don't have a trade dress protection from the United States Patent and Trademark Office, it's pretty difficult to prove in court. But if what you're talking about is really what most of the consumers associate when they see a certain design or certain ornamental features. So it is important because it saves us, your attorneys, the difficulty of proving that you actually have trade dress protection. Wow, I think that we are done, Sam. That was like a great a great interview of Tea with Noli and P. Thank you so much.
Thank you for answering my questions. I learned a lot.
Bye.